I'm assuming like when you guys are on tour, right? And for years you've been living this lifestyle. It's a late night lifestyle. Then for the last year, right? The pandemic year, I think a lot of people's routines have changed. I'm getting up earlier. I'm going to bed earlier. I feel like I'm aging prematurely. What has this year been like for your guys' lifestyles?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a big change. I mean, not being able to play shows has been crazy. Just because, like you said, like we were so used to it for so many years, just being gone, 4 or 5 days a week to being home 7 days a week has been weird. But we've been able to make a lot of music, more music than we've ever made, and we have more songs put together and compiled than we ever had at one time. So there's pros and cons for sure. We missed the road for sure, though. It's been weird.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. I mean, it's been weird on this end too. It makes me wonder, does it make you re-examine your relationship to touring and to road life? And, you were saying you've had all this time now to write music, which I have to assume before this year, you were writing just whenever you could, you're home for a week, let's write a song, that kind of thing. Has it made you re-examine your relationship to touring? Is there anything you think you'll change when you go back?
Ooh, that's a good question. What do you guys think?
You just, when you're in the studio, you're experimenting more than you ever have in a real long time because like there's no like time constraint, versus if it's like, cool, I have a day to get a demo of this song or whatever, then it's like you kind of go for like the tried and true methods of like making something sound good. So it's been cool for like adding to different workflows in the studio or like adding different equipment or like, I don't know, like I know I upgraded my studio a lot during this time. I know Trevor did.
There's time for creative exploration too, like you were saying, right? Because I think when you're on the road all the time and you're trying to hit deadlines and benchmarks and, summer's coming up, we need a song for the festivals, that kind of thing. What's it like writing in this year when you don't necessarily know what you're writing for? You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, it's been interesting. I know a lot of artists that have been like, they've had a lot of dance songs that they've been holding on to that they don't know what to do with. They don't want to release them yet because they're like, the clubs aren't open or the festivals aren't open. We don't want to release a song yet. It'll just whatever. Luckily, we've been able to. This has been like the first time we've ever we've been making an album this last year and a half or so. It's our first album, so we've been able to really take the time to do what we've always wanted to do since we started for the last 6 years ago or whatever. So we've always wanted to be able to do a huge body of work, and we weren't really stuck on what to make. It was more just a matter of like, all right, now we finally have the time to do it, so let's go crazy with it.
Yeah, and that's the Hellraisers album, right?
Yes, sir.
So you said you've had this idea to do this album for a while. Where are you in the process right now?
Ooh, we're getting close. So we wanted to do an album since we started, and we've always just kind of done singles or a couple EPs or whatever. And a lot of it has been, like you said, just because we've been touring so heavy that it's hard to really have the time to do it. So this was our perfect opportunity, you know what I mean? So we started off just doing a shitload of sessions about a year and a few months ago or whatever, just trying to feel out what we wanted to do for the album, what songs stuck out to us, what vibe stuck out to us, and we just started making so many songs, especially because there's three of us. We sometimes we'll do sessions together, but sometimes we'll divide and conquer, and he'll do a session, I'll do a session, and whatever. So we ended up having so many songs that when it came time to start picking the songs for the album, it was very we had a few different vibes that we all really liked. And, with us three coming from different backgrounds, we've always had different tastes in music. Well, we all agree on a lot of the same stuff as well, but being able to, we kind of thought the idea of splitting the album into three different sections, sort of one representing each of us, and kind of having a different vibe per section of the album would be really cool and interesting and unique. So we've been doing that, and there's going to be probably more than 30 songs total, and we picked all the songs. Now we're just finishing all of them. We probably have 15 of them done, 16 of them done, and then the other 15 are 80% done. So on our way.
I mean, that's a big lift, 30 songs, a big release. So when we're talking about, each third of the album being sort of dedicated to a member of the group. Is it sonically, is that person taking the reins of like writing these songs? Or is it more sort of like one third is, more creative directed, executive produced by one person, whereas the next part, another person is kind of taking the lead on it?
We've always made different genres, so we just wanted it to like versus just doing one album with like every song sounds different.
Yeah.
And we had so many records that we were like, why don't we separate them in a sense, but still have them be one project?
Right. Yeah. So like the first section of the album is very like pop oriented. I sing a lot of the stuff, any stuff that we don't have features on. Kevy's singing a lot of the second part, which is a lot more hip hop, emo, that sort of vibe. And the third is very dance oriented, which Matt has always been a huge fan of. But like we all three of us all like all the types of music that we're making. It's just a matter each one sort of represents us a little bit more. And we've all written songs. We've all produced different parts of the songs and things like that. So it's a big collaborative effort. But
yeah, well, what's your songwriting process look like? And second question, has that changed in the pandemic year?
When we first started, when we first started the project, we just wrote all of our songs together, just us three in a room. Just that's all we had. We were just kind of figuring. So that was our process in the beginning. And as time has gone on, we've made a lot of friends and songs, and as well other producers and things like that. So we do a lot of writing sessions. Sometimes we'll do it all three together and maybe bring somebody in to come help write. Or like I said, like sometimes we'll all just do different sessions. Like Matt will go, I'll go, Kevin will go to three different spots, so we can make as much music as possible and to meet with different creative minds. And so it feels like a good way to do it. And we basically just like, after we have a song, we'll send it into each other, and if all of us like it, then we move forward with it. Sort of like we all send it into a group chat and to our managers and everything like that. And if some of us stick our hands up, like, oh, that one's great, let's work on that one, then we get together and go crazy with it.
You mentioned the different thirds of the albums sort of relating to each one of your individual backgrounds a little bit. I'd love to talk about those backgrounds in my order. Matt, I'm looking at you first. Where are you from? What is your background musically?
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, but I actually used to be more of like a pop punk band, and that's how me and Trevor met. But then after that, I actually was doing kind of I want to say like a 303 style, like electronic pop project.
What era is this? Like, what year are we talking about?
It was probably like, I want to say like 2009.
Yeah.
Like when 303 was like on the scene, everyone was like, cool, it's cool to put like electronic synths and like punk music, like that whole like.
Yeah. It was a whole time, man. The Bloghouse years.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely into that whole style. And like Trevor was doing more like acoustic pop. And then I was actually after that producing hip hop stuff for Kevy. And that's kind of how we all kind of teamed up in a sense.
All right. So for you coming up in St. Louis, like what kind of music was around you? Was there music in your house? Were your parents musical? Like how did music reach you in the first place?
The scene in St. Louis was very like pop punk, metal, and then like hip hop. Like that was pretty much it. There was only like three genres there was like indie experimental bands too. But like the Story of Years, that was like out of St. Louis. Nelly, of course, like Chingy, like all that kind of stuff. And then I remember meeting like Sonny from Skrillex back in the day because he was in this band called From First to Last. And like anytime there was a big metal band that came through St. Louis, like everyone went and saw them. So yeah, I was part of that whole scene, little pop punk scene, going out to shows when I was like 14, buying a $10 t-shirt, doing the whole thing.
Were you thinking that you wanted this to be your life at that point?
Sure. I thought it was so interesting. Like, wow, you could like travel on like a van, even the bands that were just doing like the passenger van touring, selling t-shirts to like make a living. I was like, that sounds amazing. I don't even care if like you're making that much money. Like I'll sleep in a van. I don't care. Like, that just sounds fun. I just want to like travel and like play shows. Like that was my whole inspiration, I think, from the beginning.
And did you end up moving out to LA pretty quickly with that kind of mindset?
Yeah, I moved in 2012, and I just wanted to do music and figure it out. You know what I mean? Because the scene in St. Louis is pretty small. Like I said, it was like everyone that was making music, they were doing those three genres, and that was it. There wasn't really like producers and songwriters and like people thinking outside the box. It was kind of like, this is it, you know?
Yeah.
So I knew in my mind, I was really into pop music and stuff too. So I was like, okay, I can't be like a pop writer or producer in St. Louis. That doesn't really make sense.
So you were already kind of thinking in a hybrid mentality that you wanted to kind of dabble in a lot of different sounds.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. How'd that conversation go with your parents when you move out to LA?
I remember I was working a job. I was making like $12 an hour at the Budweiser factory. And that was pretty good back in the day.
No, I think that's still pretty good for some people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember my parents being like, "Are you sure? Like, you want to move? Like, you got a pretty good job. Like, it's not that good." So, but yeah, they fully supported me, but they wanted to weigh the pros and cons,
Sure. Well, maybe that's a good way to switch over to Trevor here. In what Matt just said, do you see any similarities to your path? Where'd you come from to end up here?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some similarities for sure. I'd been playing in bands since I was like 14, just like different things around Portland, Oregon. That's where I'm from, Portland. And
shout out to Portland, man. I love Portland.
Oh, baby. But yeah, I was in all sorts of different bands, whether it was like a sort of punk pop, or I was in a hardcore band in high school, like very screamo. I did acoustic music for a long time. So I did all different styles, like completely ends of the different sides of the spectrum. When I was 16, I started like doing tours and stuff as an acoustic artist. And I dropped out when I was after sophomore year to really go for it completely, and started playing as many shows and booking my own shows and doing things like that. And
that's kind of crazy at 16, man. That's early to be touring and to be doing a lot of it on your own.
Yeah, for sure. But it was just one of those things where like I just wasn't paying attention to school at all. I was like writing during class, and I would stay up till 3 a.m. trying to promote my music on MySpace. And like, it was just not a good combination of like trying to go to school when I wasn't focusing on it. And my dad was a teacher in the same school district. So he was, it's a little bit weird having to go to my dad and be like, "Hey, I want to drop out." Sort of it. Like, they've always backed me up and always been there for me. So yeah, I started going to LA whenever I could for a few months at a time when I was like 17, and 18 moved out there for the first time, like legitimately. Just would go wherever I could, which is even random places, like random friends' houses, whoever had a random room. And Matt actually had a laundry room open, and I asked him if I could rent the laundry room as a bedroom. So I turned that into like a little studio room for like $200 or $300 a month, which is great. But yeah, and I lived with Matt a few different times. That's how we became friends. Like we had met out in LA. Well, we met in St. Louis briefly, but that was when I was like 16 touring, and he was 18, and I just went through the city one day, playing a show at a pizza place. That's how we met originally. Oh,
that's amazing. Did you guys actually like have a conversation at that point?
Yeah, Matt walked up to me and said, "What up?" He introduced himself, and it was just like a quick, "Yo, what's up?" Blah, 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 Matt. And that was like sort of it. And a couple years later, when I moved to LA, I was 18 and he was 20 or something. I don't know what it was, but a couple years later, I moved to LA and saw him again randomly through a mutual friend. And he was like, "We met in St. Louis when you played at Cicero's Pizza." I was like, "No way." We became friends, and whenever I needed a place to stay, I would come down and ask him basically, "Hey, do you have a room?" Whatever, and did that a couple different times before moving down again like 6 years ago, which I moved down with the intention of like, all right, I'm done with I was doing acoustic music for a long time, did that for like 6 years, toured all over, and then I was like, all right, I'm done with it. I want to do something completely different. I want to make like electronic dance music. And me and Matt, I told Matt that. Matt's like, "Oh, cool. Me and this guy named Kevy are going to be doing like the dance music sort of thing too, but more alternative." And went down to LA, and they had cheat codes already started. We got together, made some music, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. What was it about the acoustic side of it that what made you want to make the change, I guess is what I'm asking. Was it just kind of feeling like you've done what you were able to do in that arena? Was it that you heard some new sounds that kind of changed the way you were thinking about music? What kind of led to that?
There's a few different things I left out of that, my whole little story, but I guess to explain it like shortly, I was signed with Atlantic from the ages of 16 to 20 or whatever. And it wasn't going very great. And I had left the label. And at that point I had felt like I had done everything that I could do. And like, I was getting bored with experimenting that style of music. Just because I'd been recording that style of music for like 5-6 years at that time. And I was like, all right, I'm kind of done with just doing the acoustic. It's like a little boring on the production side. And I had been producing like my friends, different bands. So I'd been used to producing all different styles of music. And I felt like acoustic was like the most boring for me to produce, you know? So, and I wanted to do something that was completely opposite of that. And to me, the most opposite of acoustic music was like electronic dance music, where you don't have to stick to one genre. You can really go crazy with it and, you know, bring in some folk vibes one day and then do hip hop stuff one day and then do whatever. So you can really just experiment and never be stuck in a box. So that was really appealing to me.
Yeah. Well, and similarly to what Matt said, am I right in thinking that you were another person who was kind of always listening to a bunch of different styles of music?
Yeah, I love all sorts of music. Like I grew up listening to everything. I grew up, you know, listening to the Beatles or Bob Dylan, or I love country music. I love hip hop. I love pop music. I love everything. So it's just, to me, it's all about just the pop sensibility of, you know, something that's just good to listen to. It's catchy or it feels good, or which is part of the reason why you know, the part one sort of represents me. The Chico's album is very just pop oriented, and that's sort of my thing. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure a singer-songwriter background serves you very well in that capacity, right? Because even if we look at that first, you know, the 4 years, 16 to 20, you're signed to a major label deal, super young, and maybe it's not exactly what you wanted it to be in the end. But do you look back at that as maybe kind of a training camp for what you're doing now?
Big time. I think at the time, of course, it was like horrific. You're like 16, 17. You're like, oh no, this is like, I'm never going to make it. Yeah. I'm so screwed or whatever. But you learn so much, like not just about like the touring aspects and the writing aspects, but about the business. Like that was a huge thing that I really like learned a lot from, and came out of that whole situation coming in to Cheat Codes with a whole new perspective of thinking like, all right, we're going to do this right. You know, any contract we sign has to be legit. Any people that we work with has to feel good, and just doing things correctly. And yeah, being able to do that was you know, the training was really good. And but like you said, being able to do the songwriting was a really cool thing too, because coming into it, like I said earlier, it was just us three sort of in the room making these songs. So, you know, we didn't have to rely on anybody else, and we were able to sit in the room and write a song, produce a song, mix a song, and be good to go without having to, you know, reach out or you know, wait for somebody else. So, that really helped us. All three of us write. So since we started, we've been able to just write songs, and yeah, we didn't slow us down at all. So yeah, I know a lot of producers, a lot of DJs, especially, like they're just producers. So they have to wait for a top line. You know, they're like waiting for people to send them ideas and just like begging for a good idea, which is, you know, I totally get it, but that's a tough position to be in. So we didn't want to be in that position.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, man. I think that's a huge advantage, not only to have, you know, three people in the group, but to have that kind of background and that varied interest. I think that can only serve you well. And, you know, maybe that's a good way to talk to Kevy for a second, because Kevy, you're from California originally, right?
Yeah. Born and raised out here, man. My story's a little bit different. I was born and raised in Calabasas area, San Fernando Valley.
Yeah. So tell me, what did your folks do? What kind of environment did you grow up in?
I grew up, my family's like works in the entertainment industry. My dad is a re-recording mixer for like movies and stuff. And then my mom was just like kind of like a stay-at-home mom. But I grew up around like entertainment world my whole life pretty much. Yeah. So
they understood when you kind of wanted to go in this direction.
Yeah, 100%. Especially because my two older brothers were in like a big rock band back in the day.
What band?
It's called Clear Static. But they did like tours with like Duran Duran and shit.
That's a really,
Play Guns.
That name is familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So they were like used to the whole music industry world and the whole scene. for me, it was like completely, because I grew up my whole life playing basketball and stuff and like trying to go pro. And, but like seeing like my brothers like do these crazy huge shows and stuff. And like my uncle's also in a band called Sugar Ray. And it's like seeing that stuff when I was growing up was like,
I know that band.
Yeah, everyone knows that band. So it's crazy like seeing those kind of shows when you're like a kid and like being like, oh, this is super sick, you know? Like this is really possible. You can pretty much do whatever like you want to do if you like put your mind to it. That's like kind of how I was raised, I guess. And then, yeah.
That's interesting. So when did it switch from NBA to music?
It's actually funny. So I used to, when I was like playing basketball and stuff, I got hurt. And then I had to go get like homeschooled and do like homeschooling stuff while I was recovering. And then during that time, when I was like 16, 17, I became friends with Justin Bieber.
Oh, wow.
And then I saw like that whole world and I was like, oh, this is like mega dope pop star lifestyle, you know?
What level was he at? Was this when he was still starting out a little bit?
No, this is like after Never Say Never.
Okay. Yeah. So he's a pop star at that point.
Yeah, he was like, you know, still fresh, right when he started getting bad. But yeah, dude, that was crazy.
Well, I mean, how did that? I feel like we can't just drop that in and move on. Like, how did you meet him? What was that? How did that relationship affect you and your path?
Oh, dude, definitely affected me. But how I met him was actually my friend Trey. He's Will Smith's son, oldest son from his first marriage. He was hitting me up, asking me if I wanted to like throw a party for Justin Bieber because I knew all the girls, you know, and like,
yeah,
that's dorky, but yeah. So, so I hit up. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll do it. I rolled up to his house with like 100 chicks, bro, and you know, ever since then it was like super tight. And that made me see like, oh, dude, like I really want to get in this stuff, and that's kind of when I put basketball on the side. And then I was like, okay, how do I get into this? I need to make money. So then I started doing like working in the movie business. I started doing like stunts and stuff. And
you're doing stunts?
Yeah, I'm doing stunt driver.
Wow.
And then I did that, saved up some cash, and that's when I found when I linked up with Matt because I had some cash finally, and I was like, oh, dude, I'm gonna do rapping now, you know, because I grew up around hip hop my whole entire life, like playing basketball and stuff is all I listened to. Loved hip hop. I was like, I'm going to be like the next Drake. You know, that's what I was thinking. And I hit up Matt and I meet Matt and we were like hella vibing, you know, like this dude was super chill. This dude, like, he was like open-minded. We're like, you know, like I could tell him like, yeah, like we're going to like, you do this and you're going to make bank or like, we'll be like rich and famous. And he'd be like, yeah, okay, I see it. You know, he wasn't like one of those people that's like, no, that's not possible.
Right.
So after like the first time I met him, I was like, this guy's sick. He's got sick beats. And then the dude who was the middleman, this middleman guy who like owned the studio where Matt would come in and like I would come in to work, right? He like scammed us both. He like didn't pay Matt or something. And then he like took Matt off my project. This whole scammy thing happened. Me and Matt ended up like, yo, let's sue this guy. During that process of us suing him together, we just became like hella close. And then that's when we're like, yo, let's do like all dance music and like become DJs, because I had a couple friends that were doing DJ gigs. Actually, my buddy Trey at the time, and he's making like 15, 20, 25 grand in Vegas, you know, and he doesn't have any hits. And I was like, wow, this is the life. Yeah. And then ever since that, kind of just snowballed into, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's no better way to form a friendship than with a lawsuit, right?
Exactly, man. Yeah, dude, it's like a fucking movie now. Like if I play it back in my head, we had like one of the dude's clients serve him the papers. Wait, wasn't that chick his client, Matt?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny, man. It's like a movie.
I was like making her beats, but then she was recording the vocals with this guy named Michael. So I was like, hey, next time you go and record your vocals, like do me a favor and like give him these papers and tell him that he's been served. And she was like, okay. Like,
dude, so funny, man. Crazy.
Like, finished the session, recorded her vocals, and then like handed them these papers. It was so funny.
That's amazing.
Me and Kevin were just waiting outside the studio and And she gets done with the session. She comes out. She's like, "Yeah, I gave him the papers." They were like, "Cool."
That whole story is incredible, and it's so there. I'm hearing kind of this duality that I want to ask all you guys about, because Kevin, you're talking about, you had these big dreams for the project, like even from the start. You kind of saw what you wanted it to be years down the road, right? And then, Matt and Trevor, you're talking about the grind of it and touring around in a van and renting out a laundry room, writing songs in a bedroom because you didn't have anywhere else to write songs. Looking at where you're at now versus kind of where you came from and where you started, is there anything you miss about the early days? Is there anything you miss about the grind?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love what we're doing now, and you never want to be looking back and man, I miss the good old days.
No, of course, yeah.
What we're doing now is amazing, but I totally get I love being in that, and I still live really actually close to the house we used to where we started, and my friend lives in the house. Two of my friends live in the house where we started Cheat Code, so I still get to go over there, which is awesome, and go to the room where we wrote our first songs and stuff. But when we first started, we were it was me, Matt, and 6 other people living in one house. Kevin would come over every single day. We would just smoke and write and make music, and there was absolutely no pressure because we didn't have any nothing had come out yet, or it was just doing it strictly just because we're just doing it because we wanted to just have fun with it. And that was really those memories are really, really will always be dear to me, and I always miss those sorts of things because that was just really fun. But everything just keeps getting cooler and cooler, so it's hard to complain.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, what about you, Matt? Is there anything from the early days, a certain romance? Do you miss any of that?
I played in San Francisco, and there was probably 100 people. I remember being so nervous. I'm pretty sure I threw up before the show or something, and it's now we play shows. There could be 10,000 people, and I'm like, cool, just another day clocking in. Here we go. No pressure. It's whatever. So I'm not saying that I miss being nervous because obviously that's hard to sustain. Just deathly nervous for every show, but
right.
There is something there is a initial excitement when you're doing a new project that you're just oh my God, everything's so fresh, everything's so new, and everything's exciting. Whereas now it's we've done everything, we've done so much that it's stuff's still exciting, but it's not every day you're waking up oh my God, what's going to happen next? You know what I'm saying? So,
well, you got to work harder to keep it exciting, right? You're completely right. At the start, everything's new. So, the new shit is always exciting. But then as you go along and you've done more things, there's less and less that's going to be new for you, right? I mean, how do you guys keep it exciting and fresh for yourself at this point in your career? What keeps you here? What drives you?
Adding new goals for sure. Just always having new benchmarks that we want to hit, and just making new music always keeps me going. Just wanting to be able to switch it up and take it to the next level and push the envelope and just change music as the culture too. So just being able to create things is keeps me going. But we constantly have new goals. Every time we reach something, we want to go further. So
well, but even that is a funny thing too, right? Because I relate to what you're saying, but it is that funny thing where every time you get to the goal, it's never enough, right? Or it's never what you thought it was going to be, or you start to see the next one in front of you. Are you the kind of person, and I guess I'll ask you, Trevor, because you brought it up, where it's hard to sort of be in the moment and be satisfied with what you're doing without, trying to figure out, okay, what are we doing next? What's happening? Because I'm sort of that way too.
Right. I don't know if it's hard to be satisfied. I'm always super, super grateful for every day that we get to do this shit. It blows my mind every day. But at the same time, there is that sort of that feeling. I remember 6 years ago, I would have absolutely killed to be where we are right now. You know what I mean? And when you're living it, you don't really fully you're not really understanding how lucky we are. Maybe as I would have 6 years ago to if I woke up the next day and be holy shit, what did we do?
Right.
So, I mean, there's definitely finding that balance of always wanting more, but always trying to, be grateful for what we have. So yeah, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job at, keeping our heads, on our shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, Kevy, is it what's the driving force? Is it still that vision of fame and success, or has it changed over the years?
I mean, we're not there yet. We're not at the top. So as soon as we get to the tippity top of the peak, then that's when you saddle, and then that's when you just catch the wave and ride it down, you know? But until you just kind of feel it, I guess, you know? And for me, we're not there. So I think we need to go 100 times bigger and better every year, you know? Bigger goals, bigger things.
That's fair. I mean,
could be anything, though.
What you're saying makes me want to talk about, ostensibly the biggest single song you guys have done, which is No Promises. And at the time, I have to imagine a song like that, the reaction that it got, that must have felt like making it to a certain level, right? To reach that. I mean, talk a little bit, just whatever comes into your mind. I'm just curious, the experience of having a global hit like that, because you guys had big songs before, but this was big on a different level, and I think exposed you to an audience that you maybe didn't have before, and people who didn't know what you guys were all about. What does it feel like? What's the experience of having a hit that is that huge?
You know what? This is the first thing that came to my mind. Is there was like a quote from Jim Carrey, and he was like, "I wish everybody could get rich and famous so that they could realize that it's not like it's all cracked up to me." Essentially, is like the gist of the quote. It's not like word for word. That's like when you're in, I don't know, most musicians that make like pop music, they're like, "Oh, I just want to get on the radio," you know, and then you get on the radio and you're like, "Oh, that was cool," but it's actually better to have a diehard fan base, or it's actually better to like create a culture or create like a movement or create an album that people love. You know what I'm saying? It's like, kind of have different desires after that, because you realize, when you get the radio fans, a lot of times it's like young girls that are like 10 years old or 11 years old, and you're playing like the Jingle Ball, you know what I mean? And it's like, we're used to playing clubs and festivals, and it's not that, like, obviously we can do anything. We love to play those kind of shows and everything, but you kind of realize, and I'm sure a lot of artists realize this too, that like some of your most diehard fans, their favorite song isn't the one that made you the most money.
That's a great point.
I'm sure there's like a lot of Drake fans out there that their favorite song isn't like God's Plan. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Right here.
We got one on the line. Yeah. But no, I know exactly what you mean, man. I mean, that's maybe one of the things I was alluding to, is that all of a sudden you guys become pop artists to a certain extent. Obviously, we've talked about you listen to pop music, you like pop music. I like pop music as well, but I think you're right that the pop audience, pop is the reason people make fun of pop music, is because a lot of it can be disposable. And I think that's the way a lot of people consume pop music, right? Is you listen to something intensely for a short amount of time, and then you kind of toss it off and move on to whatever's next. Was it weird to see yourselves kind of being perceived as a pop artist? All of a sudden you guys are nominated for a Radio Disney Award, that kind of thing. Like all of a sudden in this whole other zone. I feel like that transition, at least for me, that would be just sort of a wild thing to experience.
Yeah, it really was, for sure. We were definitely, that was like what we wanted to have happen, to be honest. It was one of those things where we wanted to, when we started, like, we were just releasing songs we made in our bedrooms, just one song every month, just doing, and our goal was to make every song bigger than the next. You know what I mean? That was like really sort of the mindset, was like, let's release a song every month and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So at that time, it was just like, we had a couple songs that were doing really well, like Sex and Let Me Hold You and whatever, but those weren't like radio American top 40 songs. So it was just like, cool, this one's doing well, this one's doing well. The next step would be to get a top 40 song on the radio, you know what I mean? And we were able to accomplish it, which was fucking awesome. And back to your question before, which was, how did it feel? I mean, for me, it was unreal. It was like everything I dreamed of since I was a 12-year-old, being able to make a song.
That's where you started, right? Was in that singer mode.
Totally. Yeah. Just like, so just going from making songs in your bedroom and like recording everything to like a couple of years later, really, or even a year or two later, having a song like that come out with somebody like Demi Lovato was mind blowing, for sure. It was like, holy shit, this is really happening, we're not just like bedroom producers anymore, you know? So it was eye-opening for sure. And
well, so what happens after that then? Because, you know, if you're saying this is the goal, we accomplished the goal, it worked really well. You had this huge song, right? And all of a sudden you're in this whole other zone. You know, we were talking earlier about how, you know, there's always another goal past it. And there's always, you know, you're saying, you know, we haven't gotten to where we want to get yet. So what's the experience after having a global hit? Because I'm sure after that, there's some pressure, whether it's internal or external, of, oh, we got to follow this up. You know, there's expectations that there weren't before. What is that like? And how did you guys react sort of in the aftermath of a hit like that?
That's a good question.
I was going to say, I remember distinctly after No Promises, and then Pretty Girl kind of blew up the same time. Which was completely random, like no push. And then I remember like sitting in like a label meeting and then being like, we have to follow this up, but we have to do it ASAP. And like, it's all this like frantic energy. And we're kind of like, really? Okay. Like if you say so. And then, you know, we did Feels Great, and that hit the top 40 as well, just for like a second. I don't know. I think it started kind of becoming this thing where, you know, you have people that are investing money into you and they have their opinions, and it's like a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So we had to kind of recalibrate and be like, okay, well, we want to make music for our fans. So like, let's make a really cool dance record, you know? And we were able to put out records like Balenciaga and Who's Got Your Love, which was a number one. It was surprisingly was our first number one dance radio song, was Who's Got Your Love. Yep. So that was like one of our goals after No Promises, because we're like, okay, well, we've never had a big dance song, so but
sure.
We're dancing. We only did like a big pop song.
Well, and I think that's a smart way to think about it. First of all, just to have the perspective to sort of trust in yourself and not feel too much of the external pressure of people telling you, you know, what they think you should do to follow it up. But secondly, to not just try to, you know, top your last thing by copying your last thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, listening to all of this, you guys have all these different influences, but it seems like you're always coming back to dance music. You're dabbling in other things, but it's all sort of under the umbrella of dance music at the end of the day. What was it like? Do you guys remember early dance music you heard that really turned you on to it? Like, why do you end up always coming back there instead of somewhere else?
Calvin Harris. Yeah. I mean, you see how for me personally, like Calvin Harris back in like the early 2010s, 2011s, he was so epic, you know? And then when he started doing the whole club scene in Vegas in like 2013 era, it was just like crazy, because here's this guy that like, no one really knows what he looks like. He's just a DJ, he's a producer, but he's also like singing on the record, which is really sick. You know, you didn't see that. And his overhead cost to do shows is like nothing, you know? So it's like, if someone else could replicate that, but in like a group way, would be epic and legendary.
Was his music some of the first dance music you heard that really grabbed your attention?
Yeah. Calvin, Avicii, and then Nicky Romero back in like the day. Cause I used to like, dude, when I was like 18, 19, I was like going to Vegas and like going to the clubs, like seeing the DJs. One time I snuck into like a Deadmau5 show at the Cosmopolitan back in the day. So like, yeah, those three guys, man, because they had like that poppy element, like it's catchy, you know, it's not like in your face dance music where it's like, oh crap, whoa, what the heck? It was like good melodies, good vibes, like just positive, you know, positive feelings.
Well, and it's really interesting that you had the experience of kind of first seeing dance music in the Vegas arena, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that style, because seeing it there, that's about as blown up as you're ever going to see it, right?
Yeah.
And so I can imagine, that actually makes a lot of sense for everything you're saying of connecting to, you know, your other inspirations.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, it's funny because I hadn't even gone to like a DJ or like a DJ show or anything like that until we played that. Like I had never seen that or been to a festival until we played it. So I was like newer to it when we started the project. But for me, like as an influence from like a producer perspective, like Avicii before we started, to me was like what made me think like, oh, you can really take dance music and blend it with a lot of different things, and you can get away with it, and you don't have to be stuck in a box. That for me was like the really like eye-opening, like appealing aspect of dance music and the production behind it. For me, I wanted to be able to do something production-wise that I wouldn't be stuck in a box. And dance music's the only thing that you could really do that I knew of, and that I still to this day I feel like it's like the only thing you can really blend genres together. So yeah, that was really appealing for me.
Yeah. And from like the live perspective, now that we've done like 4 or 5 plus years of touring and playing shows, it's like with us 3 listening to different music, like Kevy probably listens to more hip hop than any of us. I listen to a lot of dance music. I listen to a lot of pop music. Trevor probably listens to like, I don't know, more like indie or just like R&B shit than any of us, So it's like, if we can put a show together where all 3 of us are like fucking with every song and the set, and like we're enjoying it, then there's like a good chance that the audience will too. So that's kind of something we try to bring differently than other DJs, where it's like, when we first started, it was like all like the sub genre where it's like your tropical house and like your entire hour-long set, you're only playing a certain BPM, and we didn't want to do that, because we would have been bored. So now when we're doing this album and we have 3 parts and there's 3 different genres to kind of go full circle with how does it all come back to dance music, it's less about dance music and it's more about how do you create it in a way that here's something from all genres that they're still into in a cool way.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. And it makes me wonder, like, how do you see yourselves fitting into, like, do you see yourselves as part of the dance scene? Do you see yourselves more as a pop group at this point? Or do you even care about, like, do you think about that at all?
I think we're super unique in a sense where we sort of blur the lines a little bit. I think that it is a blend of DJing and a blend of a band and a blend of a pop group. I mean, because we do DJ, but we also sing, we also play instruments, and we write. So it's like it's an interesting sort of project, and that was sort of to me what really interested me about it so much in the very, very beginning. I mean, when I told Matt and Kevin, I remember like when I wanted to do my own solo thing for electronic dance music, and they told me, "Hey, we're doing cheat codes. We're doing the same style of music." I was like, man, like if we did this together, and I was thinking like that would be really unique and special and crazy. And, when we decided to do that was really sort of what poked out to me is like, there's nothing like this out there right now, So I thought that I still think that we can, get to the top in all sorts of those worlds,
Yeah. I mean, is it important to you how other people think of you? I guess that's sort of an obvious no, but I mean, do you care, the people who like what you do and listen to your music, is it important to you that they think of you in a certain way? Is there a certain audience you're trying to reach, or a certain scene you want to be seen as a part of?
Not for me. I personally like the idea. I like the fact that I think that there all sorts of people or listeners or fans or whatever that might think different things about us. Some people might be like, guys are sick DJs, or I love their voices. Their voices are sick, or I like when they play live. It's crazy. So being able to have different reasons for people to like us and to connect with us, and I don't necessarily love being put in a box as like, I don't think we want to just be DJs or just be pop musicians or whatever, So I think that being able to live in multiple worlds benefits us.
Sure. And how does that relate to your songwriting then, when you're thinking about, obviously we were talking about the Hellraisers album and how you're able to work in a lot of different styles in that format. Say it's just a regular day, you're going into the studio to write a song. Is it in your mind that, okay, we've made a few dance songs, maybe we should, try something new? Or is it more just kind of following whatever you're feeling that day and kind of being open to the creativity of it?
I think it depends on what phase we're at. Like a year ago, we were like very much so just, let's just write a song today. Whatever comes to our minds, whatever is the best idea, let's write that. Now that we're kind of coming closer to the end of our album, I think now we're sort of like, okay, what are we missing? Are we missing like this sort of song, or like maybe we need another one of these? Like I feel like we're missing this. So for me, it's becoming a little bit more specific just right now, just because of what time we're in, like what we're making. But usually if we're not in album mode, which we usually aren't, it's very much just let's make a great song and see where it goes. And sometimes it doesn't work out for us, where it works for, like, maybe it's a great song, but we pitch it to somebody else because maybe it's not a dance song. Maybe it's not something that we can make a dance song. Yeah, just depends.
You know, talking about the journey, we've covered a lot from where you guys started to where you're at now. You're working on the Hellraisers album. I kind of want to talk about your relationship to your career over the years. And we touched on it a little bit. You know, Kevin, you were talking about the vision of the fame and that you're not there yet. And there's, you know, you have visions for how big this could be. But I wanted to talk about something Matt mentioned earlier too, which is that, you know, it's what people see online and the goals that people think they should have when they sort of start out in this business. It's not always what it seems to be, and that your goals end up moving and you end up thinking about it differently. What is your relationship to things like celebrity and to things like social media? And, you know, especially like you guys are public figures at this point. That I have to assume over a long career, a giant hit like No Promises, your many other hits that we've mentioned. Has your idea of celebrity and fame and interacting with people, has that changed over the years at all?
Mine has. I think going into it, when you're like a kid and you want to be a musician, you know, you think, oh, I want to be really famous. I want to, you know, have everybody know my music, blah, blah, blah. And of course you want to be, you know, be successful and to do things as well as you possibly can. But the more time goes on for us, the less I want any sort of fame. Truly, I think that stuff, we've only had a taste of it and it's stressful and it's not my vibe. I'm much more interested in making music that everybody knows than I am about having people, you know, wanting to take pictures or whatever constantly when you leave the house or whatever. That'd be brutal. So yeah, for me, it's changed slightly.
I think anybody listening to this needs to understand that, like, just because you see something on social media or you like see some drama on TMZ or whatever, it's not necessarily like real.
Yeah.
Like stuff is like,
it's all a game, man.
Yeah. It's all just like, it's all entertainment. Like even like because social media, when it first started, was supposed to be like, oh, this is who they really are. This is like the artist, but this is them, like their real person talking on Instagram. But now, because social media is like such a big part of marketing your music, all of these, any big artists, they have like teams that are helping them with that. And it's like part of their persona and their brand. So that kind of stresses me out less knowing that,
right?
You know?
Yeah. Once you see behind the curtain.
Yeah. You're not as like worried, like, oh my God, like, what does this person think of me? Or how am I being perceived? Like, you don't really care because you're just like, well, who cares? Like,
it's all a game. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all part of the entertainment. You know? So
yeah. No,
part of the performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of the performance. That's a really interesting way to put it. I like that. And it's so funny because you're right. When social media started, it was supposed to be the most authentic thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, many people where you see their internet now and you're like, oh, this person's probably terrible. And you meet them in person and they're like great people, like really chill, nice. And you're like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah. Is there anything you do to take care of yourself, your mental health, to stay sane in the middle of all of this?
Oh man, surround yourself with good people is a huge thing for me. It's just always being around people that are just down to earth and people that love you, and whether it's your family or friends that are actually legit and, you know, willing to tell you what you need to hear. Things like that are important.
How about for you, Kevy?
If I'm being honest, man, important for me to like keep me grounded is just throw it all on CCIV and then hope it goes up to the moon. Kind of just keeps me level-headed, honestly.
I don't know what that means.
It's just Churchill Capital, chapter 4. Yeah, it's just like a stock. I'm like heavy in stocks, bro. So I just kind of hedge the future on the stock market, and then hope I get to hang out with Elon one day.
That's the best answer to that question I've ever heard, is to keep calm. You play the stock market.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's like, you know, if Kevy's just like, well, if people hate me online, at least I got my stocks, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's true too, right? Is that always having a plan B. There's this romanticized notion that you have to like jump off the cliff and not even have a plan B. If you really want to make it, you just got to throw everything you got, which is true to a certain extent. But man, I think a plan B is so important to have something you can always rely on.
Yeah, it's good to have fun. It's good. As long as you're having fun,
Yeah, well, that too, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day with all of this, like say you are the most famous artist in the world, say you're bigger than Drake or whatever. If you're not happy, what is any of it worth?
Yeah. Exactly. Truth.
Well, hey, this has been great talking to you guys. Is there anything we haven't talked about with that? Anything coming up people should look at? Anything you want to let people know?
What specifically? I mean, part 1 coming in a couple months. The rest of the part 2 and part 3 will be out this year. Yeah, we got a shitload of music. 30 songs, more than 30 songs, probably 34, 35.
I was listening to part 2 last night. It sounds awesome. And I was like...
You're like, hey, I did it. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'm just going to end by asking the same question I ask at the end of each one of these interviews. Just looking for a memory or a moment in your life. It could be from any time when you're a kid, 5 minutes ago, anytime when in a single moment, a single memory, music really had a deep impact on you, really had a just like a crazy effect on you. And that's meant to be super broad. You can interpret it any way you want. Kind of just the first thing that pops into your head.
For me, when we were little, we were really little, like kids, if we couldn't sleep, we would ask my dad to come in and play a song for us to help us sleep, because he would write songs and play them on acoustic guitar. He would write songs when he was like 20, 21, 22. So when we were little kids, we would have him sing the songs to us to help us fall asleep. So that really stood out to me like really vividly as a kid, thinking, wow, it's really cool that he like wrote these and is able to play them to us. So I really want to be able to do that one day. So that was cool for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's just a beautiful memory in general, man. But that's kind of also beautiful talking about your whole journey. You can't start much earlier than that. That plants a seed, I think.
Right, totally.
Matt, what about you?
When I was like 14, 15, I saw this band called Death Cab for Cutie live.
So good.
And it was like kind of the bigger theater in St. Louis. So it's probably like the first time I've been to like a, not like a 200 person like grungy rock show. And I just remember the show was like so good and it was so tight. And I just remember like, it kind of elevated my level in my mind of like what a good show could be. Yeah. I think that was very inspiring for me of like, wow, like how did they do that? Like the cogs kind of started working in my brain. Like, how did they put that together? How are they so like on page with the like lights and just like the transitions between their songs and like the little breakdown moments they did, all that stuff. It wasn't like they just played the records on the album exactly, like they made it like an experience.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good moment too, right? The moment where you turn from being a fan into really starting to see yourself as a part of it, right?
Kind of see behind the curtain, like how you said, like, how was it made?
Right. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And Kevy, how about you to wrap it up?
Probably for me, man, would be when I was younger, when I saw my brothers playing with Duran Duran, and I saw Duran Duran singing "Ordinary World" at the Madison Square Garden. I just caught a lot of vibes during that.
How old were you?
I was probably like 12, 13.
I love it, man. Sometimes there's just those memories that just stick in your head, right?
Yeah, just can replay it over and over,
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I think in some ways, maybe this is an extended metaphor, but I think in some ways that's all we're trying to do as artists, right? Is make some more of those memories, whether it's for ourselves or for somebody else.
100%.
This has been great, guys. I appreciate it. How you feel? You feel good?
Feel awesome. Thank you so much. You killed it.
You feel fantastic.
Good.
Awesome.
Later, bro. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Later, man. Thank you, bro.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to Cheat Codes. Great to have you guys on, man. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Don't forget, Cheat Codes, the debut album Hellraisers. It's coming later this year. But for the time being, you can go check out their latest single called That Feeling with Danny Quest and Haley May, which is out right now on Spinnin' Records. My name is Willy Joy. You can keep up with me as well at Willy Joy or at Back to Back Pod. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address, or you could just come join the Back to Back Discord. I'm going to keep saying it every single week because the Discord is the best, man. That's the best way to reach me. I'm in there all the time. If you got any thoughts, anything you want to ask me, if you're a music producer and you want to share what you're working on, get some feedback, meet some other like-minded producers, and compare notes, all of that, you got to come join the Discord. So links for all of that, cheat codes, the Discord, it's going to be in the description of this episode. That's it for this week. Another episode down. I hope you're doing all right, you, the listener. It's just a wild time out in America right now. People are getting vaccinated. I hope you have already gotten it. If you haven't, I hope you get it soon. I hope your family's doing all right. Look, guys, it's tough when the light is at the end of the tunnel and we can see it, but you got to keep wearing a mask. You got to keep social distancing. You got to keep washing your hands. All of that. We're so close. Let's not fuck it up now. I love all you guys. Be safe. Take some time for yourself this week. You know, you can take a little break. You can take a few hours. Go do something fun. Go relax. It's all right. You deserve it. Take a walk, listen to your favorite podcast. It doesn't have to be this one. It probably should be, but it doesn't have to be. It's all right. I can be your third favorite podcast. I'm cool with that. But whatever it is that you're doing, I'm thinking about you guys out there. Be good, be safe, be happy, and I will talk to you next week. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.